So I guess obviously, the best place to start would be, when you guys read the script, what was it about this project that stood out to you as something that you wanted to be involved with?
Do you want to start, Devon?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I was sort of like at a place acting wise where I started screenwriting, and that kind of became more of what I was focused on. And then I wasn't really acting for a little while, and I saw this script came in, like very few auditions would come my way, and this one came, and I was like, oh, this is actually like, this is the kind of script like I wish I wrote. Like, it's like there's so much cool symbolism in terms of taking horror and really making it a great metaphor for something that's so real, and the idea of having trauma represented as a little piece of yourself that gets kind of left behind and that you're haunted by was such a cool so cool to me that I flipped for it and was excited to kind of play anything in this movie that they would let me. So I auditioned, I sent a tape, and then I met with Addison and got the part. And that was maybe, I want to say like that was close to a year before that we even made the movie, because of COVID. It kept getting pushed and pushed. So I kind of kept thinking like, I don't think this is even gonna probably happen. Like, I think, who knows between now and then, like what will happen. But then we were all there and we filmed during COVID, and it was so cool. It was awesome.
Yeah, oh, that's awesome. That was such a good answer, by the way. I'm like, how can I actually called Michelle Lewitt because I really just needed a job. I'd worked a little bit over the pandemic, or maybe this was like earlier in I don't know, but I was like, I really need a job, Michelle. And she's like, okay, well, let me think about something. I'm working on a couple things. Maybe, would you be interested in reading for something? And she sent me this. I was like, yeah. I mean, I've been reading from her 30 something years. Sent me the script, and I was like, I was, first of all, loved the idea of dealing with the mental health issue. And I think we all feel like we have a greater understanding and awareness of that now. But then specifically Blossom was just such a fun character. Like, I got to play a female predator, and there was something like kind of empowering. It was powerful to be like, I can just like make you uncomfortable and like do whatever I want and get away with it. And like, there was just something cool about that. I hadn't seen, I mean, there's like the femme fatale, but it's very different to be like, I'm using my position of power over my employees and making somebody very like sexually harassing a man. Like, I just thought that was really a fun thing to do, and making Zach physically, like visibly uncomfortable was just really fun. So I loved the character and I loved the script, and I was just happy to be on a set again. So,
I mean, Devon, what was it for you about Luke that, you connected to?
I mean, a lot. I was saying to Addison when I first met with him that I feel like I've been both the Will in a relationship and the Luke in a relationship. So I think there was a kind of an understanding of how both sides of that works, and the Luke side, that I know for myself, there's sort of a position of power you have as that person, where you are the one caring for the person all the time. You're always the one that's kind of on the pedestal, and like, you don't have to actually be very vulnerable. Like, you're trying to get the other person to be vulnerable. And so I liked that aspect of Luke, where he's constantly trying to get Will to do this thing, but you never really see Luke do that. He's sort of getting to be the therapist all the time. And that's an interesting dynamic to me in relationships, where it's sort of a selfishness in Luke that I think it was fun to explore a little bit of the dark side of, like, this person like seems like they're really giving and loving, but they're also, it's not balanced at all. And so that was kind of cool, because it wasn't, I recognized it as something true to life, and I wanted to sort of find that in it, and let Luke have a little bit of darkness as well. And I think that's something that Addison responded to, because he was like, yeah, I think it's important that there is some darkness in Luke, because we shouldn't trust Luke entirely as well. We should be with Will and wondering, like, is Luke actually what the mother's saying about Luke is, so it was fun to kind of find those little moments. And then just the love story in general, I think it was something I was not expecting. I think when you read the script, it's like, yeah, they love each other. But then when Zach and I got together, there was very instant kind of chemistry of like, oh, I really do love this person. And this really is kind of effortless to get to play these scenes. And then the breakup scene, I remember being very surprised by how the reaction I had as Luke. Like, I didn't think Luke was going to react that way. And then it happened. And it was like, oh, I think like this is devastating to him. He really did love this person as this person, not just the project that Will was, but he loved how silly this person was, how it brought out this other side in him, because Luke is so rigid and so kind of, type A, that like it was devastating. And I think that hopefully that comes across, where it's like you really want them to stay together. So then when it does fall apart, it's like, no, like we see how good this could be if they would both be the healthy versions of themselves.
And the film opens with the text based on a real breakdown. Did knowing that this sort of come from such a personal part of Addison's history, did that sort of influence your guys' performances?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think like whenever something has happened to somebody in real life, there's a level of authenticity that's going to come across in what they're trying to convey, because they live those moments. So, knowing that they're sort of based on either real people or amalgamations of real people, you kind of feel like you're caring for someone's story, and you want to honor it in the best way possible. And it definitely makes you feel like you can trust the process a lot as an actor, because you're like, okay, this person knows exactly what each one of the reality baseline of each one of these scenes, so that you're not going to be so far off in a direction that doesn't actually track when you watch back. So that was really a fun and cool thing to try to protect and to honor in Addison's story.
Yeah, I mean, I felt very similarly. I think a lot of the characters are based on real people in his life, and he said Luke was the only one that was sort of, he didn't have a partner at the time, and when he was going through what Will was going through in real life, so he sort of made Luke out of like a combination of a ton of different friends that he had, and sort of put them all into Luke. So I didn't really have anyone to draw from in his real life, and he would often say like, I don't really know what's going to happen with Luke. Like, I don't really, like, Luke's the one that's kind of blurry in my mind. And so that's also kind of fun too, because then you're kind of creating it together and trying things, and takes don't work, and then other takes really do work, and you're finding it as it's happening. So, but yeah, I mean, I remember just kind of reading scenes in the script and being so, especially some stuff with the mom, where I was like, oh my God, this is so well written. This is so real. And then he'd be like, well, it is real. That's why it's so that's cool to kind of know like this person really knows what they're talking about. So we're telling a story with the authenticity that it deserves, because you don't want to tell the story and kind of half-ass it and not have all the facts.
I mean, because you sort of touched upon it earlier, but there's so much of this film does hinge on that relationship between Will and Luke. How much time did you and Zach sort of have to work on that? Because there's some very vulnerable and and intimate scenes between you. How much time went into building that safe space of trust so that you could access those emotions?
I mean, it was funny when we first met on Zoom. There was sort of an instant bond. We both are Pisces, and I know that, like, who knows if that stuff's real, but I loved that he was a Pisces, and I was like, Pisces, we're Pisces. And so we sort of, right away, I felt closeness weirdly because of that. And then we went on a walk one day in my neighborhood. We went on this like long, like 2-hour walk, and just talked forever. And that was really kind of great bonding. And then we went to Addison's house and had a really great dinner. And then I know Zach wanted to go to like a cabin together for a couple of days and just really get to know each other at a cabin. And I didn't have the time in my schedule to do that. So I was like, I wish we could do that, but let's just try to imagine whatever that would be and kind of put that on screen. And I don't think we needed that in the end, because it really was, it was sort of, I was saying it's that thing that like takes over sometimes as an actor. And I'm sure, Madeline, you know this, where you don't really know what's going to happen. Like, it's not conscious in your head, but the character suddenly takes over, and the character very much knows. And so that would happen a lot, especially a lot of the scenes that Zach and I had are all one shot. Like, we don't ever break, like the camera just sort of follows, and it's like a play almost. So that adds a really cool, like authentic, all the mistakes are just there. There's no cut points. So you leave the mistakes, and sometimes they're the best part of the scene. And so, so it was, I don't know really what happened. It's hard to really speak to like why the chemistry was there, but it just sort of luckily happened. And it was,
Well, it's kind of like, sorry, I just wanted to sort of piggyback on that a little bit, because it's kind of like you really, it's exactly like what you said. You don't know what's going to happen until you get there, but it's the energy of everybody. Everything is relational. So once you step into like the circle of people and you go, oh, I totally get this. And then it becomes something bigger. But on this project, I got to like do pottery classes. Like I got to actually like hang out with Zach and Yumari in a pottery, and we did like we made little shapes. I still never picked up my vase from bitter root pottery, by the way. But there was an emphasis on process in this for the film, and the way that the actors took everything seriously, and rehearsal, and like digging in deep, and getting together and talking, and all that off camera stuff where we're not getting paid for it, but everybody wants to be there. Yeah. Everybody wants to like contribute more and deepen the characters and build those relationships. The fact that Zach was like, let's go get a cabin together. I mean, it just speaks to his level of commitment for the roles, and why that like translates on film. I don't know that for television and like a lot of movies now, like that process and like really spending the time on the scenes as an actor, I feel like that's sort of been left behind a lot now. So it was nice to have that on this.
Yeah, and it definitely shows through, because I mean, as much as, you know, some of the scenes with Will and Luke can get quite heavy, you know, the working aspect at the pottery place with Blossom, it's as much as, you know, she's saying some really terrible stuff, it adds a lightness to the piece, and you do sort of you buy that these people have been working together and sort of getting on each other's nerves for X amount of time. So it definitely does come through.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And
I'll take your word for it at the moment.
I was going to say, you know, when faced with Will in crisis, you know, Blossom, you know, Will's boss, remarks, "I'm not in the business of being fair. I'm in the business of high-end pottery." I guess it's an unfortunate reflection of a lot of employers, you know, reactions when faced with somebody in crisis. You know, do you think that this is, you know, hopefully going to shine like a little bit of a spotlight on the fact that, you know, employers really need to do better at supporting their employees through not just like a physical sickness, but mental ones as well?
I hope so. I think that the awareness, the shining the light on that is really coming to the fore now at this chapter of our existence. But I also feel like the runaway capitalistic attitude that is prevalent in our society right now, it is really, we're hopefully taking a harder look at that as well, because our humanity we're not machines, you know, and we need to take care of each other. You know, people lost a lot of people, and not just through COVID the last couple of years. People took their own lives because the lack of compassion and the emphasis on just making money is unsustainable. It's not a great business model either. You know what I mean? So like, I hope that more of a light gets shined on that. Obviously Blossom is almost more like a comedic character, and she says it in a flippant way and doesn't think twice about it. But I do hope that people like do think twice about it and see how, you know, little bits of digs at you really start to wear over time. Yeah, so I hope so. But I don't know, but I hope that it does change, because it's like I said, not sustainable. So,
I mean, you both have, you know, you've worked within and around, you know, horror and more, you know, darker themed cinema and television, you know, throughout your careers. You know, what is it about these sorts of projects that intrigues you so much?
Devon?
I love it. I don't know. I think I have a darkness in my soul that I like to have exercised in that arena. I think it's I'm always drawn to that, like both in my acting and my writing. That's sort of where it lives. And I think maybe, there's life is full of both sides, like the light and the dark. And I think that the dark for me is so it's so mysterious, and it's so I'm afraid of a lot of that stuff. So I think that then when you go into a storytelling capacity, you can you have a little bit more control over all of those scary things. And that sort of feels nice to have that. And I've played a lot of villains, and I think that that's also nice to get to kind of take those attributes of myself and not have them in my real life, but then get to have them live somewhere where they get to live and breathe for a moment and get some airtime that's not going to be destructive and hurt anybody in real life. It gets to kind of live in a safe space of a story. So yeah, that's sort of my opinion on that. I don't really know. I've never sat to dissect why exactly I get kind of juiced by the darker kind of scary things, but that's my guess sort of at the moment of maybe why that is.
I personally I'm scared of scary movies. First of all, they get made more is the truth. The truth of it is that horror films get made more. They're easy they make their money back. They get made more than all the other like talky romantic films. But so there's that. But also I think what Devon said was so eloquent and so true. Like it's a safe space to explore the shadow side for all of us. And we all have difficulty with that because it's so repressed. There's this quote from this book, which is that you spend your teenage years putting the parts of yourself you feel like don't fit into society into this bag. And then you spend the rest of your life trying to get everything out of the bag that you need to confront and integrate and to be a whole person. So I think that horror offers that to people, and anything I love a dark psychological thriller, exactly like you said, to explore those parts of ourselves.
And for me, when I was watching the film, it felt somewhere between Adam Egypt Mortimer's Daniel Isn't Real and Richard Kelly's Donnie Darko. Did Addison give you guys any points of reference for what he was going to be bringing together?
I'm not sure. I mean, I don't know if we ever talked about like a reference movie to watch, or I remember when I read it, I saw like a lot of like David Lynch in it. Like I kept kind of seeing like very Lynchian sort of, and I remember bringing that up when we talked on our first Zoom, and then he was like, oh yeah, he's like, yeah, definitely. Like I see some of that dreamy kind of stuff that's there, and the horror that kind of comes out of nowhere too, which Lynch does. And I think that's something I saw in this, but I don't know, Madeline, did he say anything? Do you get any?
No, it would, because it was based on his life. I think like the emphasis wasn't to imitate a movie or to have references in that way. It was to honor his experience. And I think maybe that's is a good thing. I don't know that like having too many references can be good. That can be a bit like, we're trying to do too many things. Let's just do it well, do it honestly. No, but I definitely felt the Donnie Darko vibe when I was reading it. I was like, ooh, this at its best, this could end up being very much like that. So I was very drawn to that because I love that movie. It's one of my favorites. And it blends these like elements of surrealistic, darker things without it taking you out of the narrative. And sometimes that can happen when like something sort of heightened pops in. You can kind of be like, wait, what's that? But it just like blends it very well, where you're like, you go along that, where in Donnie Darko, where the thing comes out and like goes along like this, you go, oh, totally. That almost, it's a visualization of something I've kind of thought in the back of my mind a few times. And then you see it and you go, oh yeah, totally. I love this. And yeah, so I definitely feel those things in this piece.
And the film is arriving at South by Southwest on Monday, I think it is. What do you guys hope that when the audience sit down with this film, what do you hope that they take from this experience of watching it?
I mean, I guess a lot of different things. I think like first and foremost, you want them to be entertained, because that's like one of the most important things about going to a movie is that you leave feeling like you saw something that like juiced you and got you, and you were invested the whole time. And then obviously like the mental health aspects it explores, the trauma, all the things you hope that people will be able to put like a like a face to the name of like, oh, that little wolf, we all have a little wolf in us. And that's something that like I know my little wolf is this thing. And that's something that like always pops up at different times and can get really big and scary unless I work on myself, and then it gets smaller and it can be contained, and it's never going to go away, but it's something that you can kind of maintain. So yeah, I think hopefully that's something that people leave with. And that, I mean, I've done so many indie films that go nowhere and no one ever sees. So this one, I'm just excited that people are actually going to see this one, because I feel really proud of it. I'm so proud to have been a part of it. And so it's more than anything, I'm just kind of thrilled that it has this sort of opening to the world at a cool festival.
Same, like honestly, like having having done stuff that never gets seen by anyone is like living with a little ghost your whole life, where you're like, did that even really happen?
Yeah,
it's
totally.
So weird. So I'm happy that people are going to see it. I hope they, like you were saying, are entertained, but also feel less alone if they have like a crazy mom, or they have are overwhelmed by life, which we all are at certain points. So like, I always hope that people see something of themselves in the piece, and then can feel a little bit like it's okay. You know, we're all uniquely bizarre and strange, and still very lovable and acceptable, and just feel less alone in that way. So
yeah. Totally.
And outside of Hypochondriac, is there any projects that you're allowed to say anything about, or is it all hush hush at the moment?
Well, I know Madeline's hush. Some of it's hush hush.
I do have one thing coming out that has been announced, which is Grendel. I don't know when it'll come out, but it'll be on Netflix, and I'm so excited about it. And Abu Bakr Ali is the lead, and Jamie Ray Newman is in it, and yeah, Eric Palladino, Kevin Corrigan. There's just so many fantastic actors in it, and I think it's going to be cool. But what about you, Devon?
I mean, a lot of my, like I said before, a lot of my stuff has moved to the screenwriting side. That's sort of been a focus of the last few years. That acting wise, I have a really small part in Jordan Peele's new movie, Nope. It's like a really little part, but a cool part. And so that I'm excited about. Yeah, that I'm excited to get to be in a movie that is just so cool, and Jordan's so cool. And so it's, so it was a lot of fun to work on. And that comes out in July. And then, yeah, just screenwriting. I mean, I have several different projects at different studios and production companies. And so it's been, and that they're all sort of horror as well. Like that sort of seems to be the thing that follows me wherever I go. But yeah, and a lot of those in the early stages, most of these movies as a writer, they never get made. They just sort of, you write them for 3 years at a studio and then they just disappear. And so, and I've made peace with like, that's just the way that it is. But I won't talk about any of them because who knows if any of them will ever happen. But I'm happy to be employed as a writer. So. Yeah.
Well, I wish you guys the best of luck with the screening.
Thank you. Thanks, Kat.
Thank you. This was really great, Kat. Thank you.